Hello. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I see everyone is very active and looks extremely engaged. We'll have a very, very exciting presentations on building evidence to rebuild trust in governance systems. We'll have some very introspective opening remarks by the representative in China, Beate Drachmann. She has a very impressive career in UNDP since 1998. She started in program officer. And she told me that I think she has covered all that is possible to cover here in Asia. And will be followed with some presentations that for the beautiful people you see on the screen, Dilek, Ines, Vebjorn, and Susan, and followed by some questions that we'll ask you, and I want to hear your experience and your consideration. But before we go to the presentation, I'll pass it to Beate, please.
Thank you, Mariana, and absolutely delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me and giving me the honor, really, to welcome all of you to this session on the theme of building the evidence to rebuild trust in governance systems. UNDP, I think, is very pleased to organize, and I'm speaking of all of UNDP corporate, not so much with my China hat on, to co-organize this session with Statistics Norway, Statistics Canada, the Department of Justice in Canada, the presidency of the government of Tunisia, and the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis, IIASA. Now, I think today's topic really has particular resonance in our current global context, where the erosion of trust in governance systems comes precisely at a time when we actually need to help these systems address the multiple crises that our world is facing, the multiple really urgent, challenging crises that the world is facing. And indeed, I think at UNDP, through our work across the globe in 170 countries to advance sustainable development, we do understand that addressing governance challenges and improving governance systems is critical to bring about the transformative changes that we want to see and that have tangible results on improving people's lives. Now, in order to rebuild the trust in these systems, we need credible and reliable data on what is working, what is effective, and what doesn't work. All stakeholders, I think, including policymakers, but also us as development practitioners, researchers, require statistics to inform our decisions and optimize the use of all our already stretched existing resources. Now, while better data does not automatically lead to better governance systems, improved statistics can be one of the tools used to strengthen transparency and accountability to the public, which then in turn can lead to greater public confidence and, of course, better policy implementation. Since the 2000s, we have actually seen around the world significant momentum in the field of governance statistics, both at national and global levels. And in particular, since the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, we have seen a remarkable increase in data availability, With SDG 16 on peace, justice, and inclusive institutions and societies, we have gone from having barely any comparative governance data available at all to currently having 39.8% of countries, so almost 40% of countries, producing at least one indicator for SDG 16. And in addition to that, the SDG 16 surveys are a well-tested tools that countries can use to measure progress on SDG 16. Globally, I think we've also seen in parallel the development of new international standards and guidelines, defining governance statistics in its various components, including citizen participation, transparency and accountability, the rule of law, and human rights. So in the upcoming presentations in this session, we will hear country experiences from Canada, Norway, and Tunisia in leveraging statistics to better understand local governance realities and progress on SDG 16, which in turn then have also contributed to defining international standards and tools. And we will hear from our colleagues in IIASA on their work in developing tools and methodologies for measuring governance responsiveness and satisfaction with public services through citizen-generated data as opposed to government-generated data. Globally, as UNDP, we certainly stand ready to continue supporting efforts to develop comprehensive governance statistics and link them with effective policy making to advance sustainable development outcomes. So in closing, let me take the opportunity to thank all our distinguished speakers who have taken time to join us today, but also all our participants. And I personally very much look forward to hearing your experiences and learning from your experiences and to the exchange that we will be having in this session. I truly believe that together we can leverage data and statistics to strengthen trust in governance systems and ultimately realize the vision of the Sustainable Development Goals to create a sustainable future for everyone, everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for concluding with a very hopeful message. Yesterday, when in the opening, or today, my days have mixed at the stage, there was very gloomy, some slide very gloomy on the decrease of the situation, but we are actually in a very hopeful moment for all that we've achieved, and there's a lot more to achieve on statistical production, at least. So I think as a hybrid event, there's always small constraints, and we needed to have one just to make it correctly. So we are having problems with one of the speakers. So Suzanne McDonald, she tried to join and she was not able, but although she'll try again later, I just wanted to speak a little bit of the experience she was going to present. Canada is one of the very strong statistical systems that we have, extremely strong in the development of methodologies, in supporting their international relations. And one of the domains, a very impressive domain that they have progressed a lot, is on the access to justice. So that was the survey she was going to present, and I'm still hopeful that we'll resolve the constraint and she'll be joining us in a bit. But while she does not join, I'm going to pass to our Tunisian experience. So they'll be presenting Ines Karat. She is presenting the integration of SDG 16 indicators in national statistical system, because it's very good that we have the framework, but then we have to actually put it on work and have to actually make it where it counts, which is at the national level, although the global level is very important. So the Ines Karat she's the director of in the General Direction of Governance and Prevention of Governance in the Presidency of Government in Tunisia. She works primarily in strengthening the system of national integrity and prevention of corruption. And Tunisia is one of the countries that UNDP has been working for a very long time. We have a SDG 16 portfolio that has very greatly invested on development tools, testing tools, and my IT team tells me I'm ready. I'll pass to Ines. Ines, thank you so much.
Good morning. Do you hear me? Can you hear? Can you hear me?
Make an effort to make it work. So, Ines, yes, we can hear you. So please
good
go
morning,
ahead.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, or good evening for those who are present in China. I'm very happy to be present as a speaker on building evidence, build trust, and governance system. And first of all, I want to thank the organizers, UNDP, and Oslo Governance Center for giving this opportunity to share with you the recent experiences on developing and using data in order to better understand perceptions on governance and link to policy making to help accelerate progress toward achieving the SDG 16. We talk today about trust, which is very important, which is the basis of our public governance systems. Public, we are, as all we know, are not and in themselves, they are to ensure services and preserve the right of every citizen. But this mechanism only work if citizens have trust in public institutions and in officials. Public trust leads to greater compliance with a wide range of public policies, such as public health response, regulation, and tax system. And it also nurtures political participation, strengthens social cohesion, and builds institutional legitimacy. In the longer term, trust is needed to help government to tackle long-term social challenges as climate change, aging population, and digitalization. Challenges we are facing today are real, serious, and many. They had been felt especially during the last few years with the health crisis of COVID-19 and the impact of climate change, which has considerably changed the life of citizens and economic and social relation. This picture, common to several countries, perfectly summarizes the context in which Tunisia has developed since 2016 an official tool to measure some essential indicators to assess governance, peace, and justice in order to cover a major part of the indicator of the SDG 16. We started 2014 by defining an SDG specific to our country by adapting the targets and the indicators to the Tunisian specificities. We put on a steering committee which is composed of public institutions, private sector, academia, society, and worked together to try to match the global indicators to the existing indicators produced by public institutions in Tunisia. But we noticed that the gap between the existing indicator and what is required is quite very high. From that moment, a technical cooperation between the presidency of the government, by Department of Governance and Prevention of Corruption, the National Institute of Statistics, and the UNDP, with the support of UNDP of Tunisia, allowed us to produce a national survey which called it Citizens' Perception Toward Local Governance, Freedom and Security. The first edition of this survey made it possible to present a reference study in 2016, which set up 3 pillars: strong institution, rule of law, and civic engagement. This survey proved to be useful in assessing the citizens' perception on public institutions such as officials, government, parliament, political parties, governments, but also of civil society, media, and public services provided by the state, such as education, health, justice, and other services for citizens. And this survey was based on 6 modules: access to justice, discrimination, governance, violence, and human rights. This survey is clear and credible and official instrument tool that can offer decision makers the possibility to adjust their public policies or their communication around those policies to the various expectations of the different categories of the population, including young people and the most disadvantaged, to leave no one behind. We have also, with National Institute of Statistics and UNDP, tried to take into account to measure from social network, because big data is very important today, that we use it to measure use of sentiment analysis of social media. The results were almost similar to the survey result, to the national survey result. This is an important issue for an institutional measurement of indicators, but which suffer from a lack of legitimacy from the official institution, and which has financial and human resources to set up a dedicated unit in order to have momentous measurement. Recently, for the 3rd edition of the national survey, which would take place on October 2021, we set up another steering committee, which include more representative of public institutions to contextualize the global survey module. We conduct at the first step pilot test in one local region in the country. Then we replicate this approach on a national levels in order to produce the first national SDG 16 progress report, which will be presented on June 2023. I try to summarize the most important step of the Tunisian experience to better understand perception on governance and link with policy making in order to accelerate the achieving of SDG 16. And to sum up, the legitimacy of public institutions is very crucial today for building peaceful and inclusive society. But what is very most important is to rebuild trust, which requires official and credible indicators, measurement, which can help institutions and decision makers to adjust their policies according to the trust level of citizens. I tried to give you an overview of our experience, and I will be glad to answer your question in some few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ines. Just to add a small part, Tunisia, we are in statistics, they implemented the SDG 16 survey together with another survey. So we merged an existing survey that they had to measure governance, peace, and security. This allowed not to break the series, the data series that they already had, but add as well new information. So not every time we go with a new operation, we should destroy the previous operation. We should try as much as possible integrate the previous one. So thank you so much, Ines. And a very small point as well that I wanted to add on their experience is the very important role of consultations with all stakeholders, with civil society when designing the survey. So it's a very technical and sometimes people might say a little bit boring language that we have. It's not boring. But when we have all actors together, it makes the experience much richer and the results as well. So next, we'll be hearing from Bjørn, and he is in Norway as UNDP Oslo Governance Center as well. And Norway is another very big and very strong, has a very strong national statistical system, as Bjørn certainly will tell us. He is the senior advisor and deputy head of division of development cooperation in Statistics Norway. He has worked as well in Statistics Canada and Eurostat, has very long experience. So, and I see him already fully ready, and I'm the one between you and your audience. So, Bjørn, please.
Thank you so much, Mariana, and thank you so much to the other organizers for setting up this excellent session and very important one. So I will talk about how we in Norway over the years have built up a system of producing statistics based on administrative registers on a whole range of areas in society. I'll quickly set up my presentation here. Shall we see? When I tested this a few minutes ago, then it all worked fine. So I hope it will do that now as well. So I will talk about So, can you all see the screen that I'm sharing now?
We can see the World Data Forum page at this moment.
Okay. And when shall we see? Now I think it should work. Apologize for that. Then I'll put it in.
Yes, perfect. Can you?
Okay,
yes.
Now here it goes. So I will talk about the Norwegian statistical system and how we over the years have built up a system where we rely on administrative data to produce official statistics. And I'll talk about the role of the statistical office and the role that we place in doing so. So first of all, in Norway, we have a very centralized statistical system where Statistics Norway, we are responsible for roughly 85% of all official statistics in Norway. That's very different from what you find in the UK or in the US or many other countries. We also have a production of our system that is increasingly based on a variety on different administrative registers. We have an estimate that around 90% of all our statistics are based on administrative registers. So surveys play a less prominent role in our system. This development, it started with the introduction of a computerized central population register back in 1964. At that time, we also introduced a unique ID number that was introduced for all residents of Norway. And then gradually more and more of our statistical production has been based on a variety of different administrative sources. And it kind of culminated with the 2011 population and housing census that was 100% based on administrative sources. And that was actually our last population and housing census. We will not conduct any of those anymore in the traditional sense. So our statistical system has gone from we used to have the traditional censuses, we used to have the full counts, we used to rely on surveys, but now it's very much based on administrative sources. And the same with this reliance on administrative registers. It's spread from statistics on individuals, but also to other areas such as enterprises and real property. So it's not only for persons, but also on other areas of society. And today we have formal agreements with some 30 plus owners of different administrative data in the Norwegian government sphere, different directorates, different ministries, and so on. And we have then access to some more than 100 different administrative registers that all share some kind of standardized quality reporting system for the data delivery, and have a regular way of sharing data with Statistics Norway. We still use sample surveys to a small degree, but only to supplement information that is not covered in the registers. So that would include questions about perceptions and so on that we not easily can find in a register. So what are the preconditions or the ground that is needed to use all these different administrative data for production of official statistics? As we see it, first of all, you need a legal base. You need a strong Statistics Act that allows the statistical office to get access to the administrative data and use them for statistical purposes. In Norway, we have that. The law says that we have access to the administrative data. We are also consulted when a new administrative register is developed. And we have the possibility to link data. Second, and that's maybe the most important topic of today's session, is the public approval or the trust, the general trust of the public in the system. First of all, that they trust that we will use the data only for statistics, that we ensure the confidentiality of the data, that there's a great deal of responsibilities that comes along being trusted with these different administrative data sources. You also need, and then you have to be open and transparent on the way and how we manage these data. You need a strong data protection legislation. In Norway, we have a very strong data protection directorate that follows us very closely and monitors how we manage and protect our data. Thirdly, another precondition is that you need a unified identification system. And this is something we have established with unique IDs for persons, for addresses, numerical addresses, and for businesses, in order to link this and build up a comprehensive and reliable register system. And this also leads to that we ease the burden on the respondents. They report once, and we can use the information that they report several times. And lastly, my last point here would be the cooperation among the different authorities on many different levels in the Norwegian government sphere. It's not only among the directors there is a cooperation, but also on the case handler and those who really know the subject matter. Now I've described the general how we in Norway has transformed from relying on the traditional sources to now using more and more administrative sources. Now I'll come up with the example of election statistics, how Statistics Norway is involved in producing the official election statistics of Norway. And the slide that I show here, it could basically be used for any statistics on persons in Norway, because it's all built up in the same way. Statistics Norway, we receive a daily transfer of data from the Central Population Register. The Central Population Register is at the core of all data on all statistics on persons in Norway. The Central Population Register also reports to the Norwegian Directorate of Elections, and it forms kind of when they develop the role of those who are entitled to vote, it's based on the Central Population Register. The Norwegian Directorate of Elections, they report to us after every election, the electoral roll, the election results, the electoral turnout, the candidates who were national candidates, regional, local candidates, and also those who were elected. And in this integrated way, we get to report the official statistics, or the official election statistics of Norway. But what doesn't really come forward here is kind of what is the added value of Statistics Norway, because in many of our statistics we get the data from the directorates who own the data, election directorate, education directorate, labor directorate, etc. But in Statistics Norway, we can add additional information, and this is something I will show on the next slide, where we can link data on individuals in Statistics Norway, where we have information from the Statistical Population Register at the core, but we can add information about their labor participation, their education status, their income, how they use different national insurance, and are users of that when they receive economic assistance. And in that way, we can kind of paint a very statistical picture of the Norwegian population that can be very detailed, but also describe the larger picture. And we can also follow people over time and make longitudinal statistics out of this. Then I'll come with one example. I've listed two, but I'll limit myself to one example of statistics that can actually be produced from this system. Norway has, over the years, since I started in Statistics Norway 20 years ago, has become gradually a more and more diverse society. When I started, there were around 6-7% immigrants in Norway. They comprise 6-7% of the total population. Now immigrants comprise around 16% of the population in Norway. And both the public, media, politicians, government practitioners, they want to know, how do migrants in Norway integrate into the Norwegian society? How can the statistical office contribute to measure this and to give indicators on how migrants integrate into the Norwegian society? And here, election statistics is one important kind of indicator or area that is a part of saying something of how people are becoming a part of a new society. This slide shows that the green one shows how many persons with an immigrant background are entitled to vote. You can see that it has steadily increased from around 6% in 2003 to 16% in 2019. The black bar shows how many of those with immigrant background actually voted in the election, and you can see that that is much lower. So the immigrant share of the total vote, it's a lot lower than what it should have been if they had voted according to their population size. The same as for the candidates with immigrant background, we can see that in 2007, around 3% of the candidates in local elections in Norway had immigrant background. In 2019, it has increased to 5.5%, almost 6%. We compare that to how many were actually elected into the local municipalities. We can see going from 2 to almost 4% in 2019, a steady increase in this. This statistic would have been extremely difficult to make based on a survey. And here we see that making use of these administrative sources can help us in getting a better picture of what the Norwegian society looks like. I think I've spent up my time now, so I'll give the microphone back to Mariana, and I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vebjørn. If anyone ever goes to Norway, I think you really should visit SSB. It is an impressive system. And some of the keywords on his presentation, open, transparent, and very clear guidelines are really strong points on their system. And the fact that they are able to connect all of those databases and produce and cross-topic different that it is quite impressive. So we already heard from a survey perspective, with INS, with administrative record perspective, with Vebjørn, but statistics is not static. We evolve, we get better with time, so we have to invest in new sources, new methodologies, new brilliant ideas. So I will introduce to you Dilek Faisal. She's presented the academic experience in collaborating with the National Statistical Office for SDGs, the case of citizen-generated data, which is the new, very exciting topic to at least to know and to learn about. So I will not, she's very excited. I did not finish, she's already raising to come to the podium. So please come, Dilek.
Thank you, Mariana, for the very nice introduction. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Dilek Faisal, as Mariana nicely introduced. I work at the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis. This is an international scientific institute that's based in Vienna, Austria. We conduct policy-oriented research into global issues. I'm also the managing director of the newly established Citizen Science Global Partnership, that is a network of to become the global voice for citizen science. So in the next 10 minutes, I guess I have about 10 minutes, I will be talking about our experiences as academia in collaborating with the national statistical offices in the context of citizen science and SDG data. So let me start by explaining what citizen science is, but before I do that, may I ask you, how many of you heard the term citizen science before coming to this session? Can you please raise your hands? Very little. How many of you have heard the term citizen-generated data before coming here? That's more. Okay, so that's great to know, because it becomes clear that I have to talk a little bit about what citizen science is. So, as I said, like these two terms, citizen science, citizen-generated data, you have heard. Probably you also have heard the term crowdsourcing. There are also other terms such as transdisciplinary research, participatory action research, or community-based monitoring, community science. There are so many of them. And the common characteristics of all these terms is that they actively engage citizens, people, in the production of knowledge. So we define citizen science generically with its three main characteristics, that is voluntary public participation, citizen participation in scientific research and knowledge production. So you may have seen people monitoring birds or doing beach cleanups or reporting on sexual violence or bribe, or their satisfaction with public services, which we will be talking about soon. And all of these basically fall under our inclusive term or explanation of citizen science. So try to be inclusive of all these diverse practices, methodologies in the field of citizen science. So I'm using this as an umbrella term to describe all these diverse activities. So before I go deep dive, I would like to give you a little bit of background from one of our research pieces, because this will give you the background of how we started to engage with the national statistical offices in the context of citizen science data. I know that you've seen a lot of complicated figures throughout the day, and you will keep seeing them. I will try to explain a little bit what this is. You may have recognized anyway, right? This is the SDG indicators. So a figure that shows SDG indicators as boxes. So in 2022, we have done an analysis, a mapping exercise that we looked into the methodologies and metadata of all SDG indicators, as well as citizen science initiatives, the way I described them, that are taking place at a local level, at a national level, at a regional level, or global level. And we try to identify whether the data these initiatives are producing can actually contribute to the monitoring of one of these indicators or more of these indicators one way or another. So our results were interesting. So we see that all the green boxes here are the indicators that we identified with potential, actually already using citizen science data for their monitoring. So these are the indicators related to protected areas. They use the data from bird monitoring projects, for example, or beach litter or other red list index, for instance. These are the areas where citizen science is the strongest, environmental citizen science. And all the yellow boxes you see here show the indicators where there is great potential for citizen science data, but this also shows us this potential is far from being realized at the moment. And all the gray boxes show the indicators at that time where we couldn't identify any citizen science, existing citizen science initiative, but that doesn't mean necessarily that they are not, there is no potential for that. It means that we couldn't identify any existing citizen science initiative, one of which I will be talking about later, 16.6.2. So our findings were interesting. So we found that citizen science data can contribute to the monitoring of 33% of the SDG indicators. This is great potential. I'm happy to talk about the details of this research, and I'm happy to share with you the scientific paper that we published out of this. If you're interested, just let me know after the session. So one of the indicators that we identified with great potential for benefiting from citizen science data was the indicator 14.1.1b, which is the plastic debris density. So in order to really understand whether our scientific work actually really can have an impact on the ground, we partnered up with the Ghana Statistical Service. Then they brought in the Ghana Environmental Protection Agency and other government agencies that are relevant to this piece of work in Ghana. And we also have, as partner, had UNEP as a custodian agency for this indicator. And we also had civil society organizations, particularly I will name one, Smart Nature Freak Youth Volunteers Foundation. This is one of the citizen science initiatives and citizen science network, volunteer network that actually is based in Ghana and that are actually going to the beaches, organizing volunteers and collecting these litter and the data from beaches. So we are very thankful for them. Without them, we wouldn't be able to be speaking about this project without them. So this particular project was about understanding the feasibility of integrating already existing or reusing already existing citizen science data that are collected through these citizen science networks into the official statistics of Ghana. So this is a piece that is published in Nature Sustainability as an interview piece, but we're also having a scientific paper out of this work. But the most important result of this work was that Ghana has become the first country to officially report on the indicator 14.1.1b, which is a plastic debris density, marine plastics, but also the first country to use citizen science data for that purpose. So the results are published in Ghana's 2022 Voluntary National Review, as well as these are reported to the UNSDG Global Database as country-validated data. So we went through a three-phase methodology. I will not have time to explain all these processes in detail, but as I said, scientific paper is on the way, so it's coming out hopefully soon. And we went through a three-phase methodology, but what I would like to highlight here, we always kept in mind or gave a special consideration into the results being policy relevant. So the results are not only used for reporting of the SDG indicators, but Ghanaian government also integrating this into their integrated coastal and marine management policy in the country that is currently under development. Oops, that went one too fast. And this is a checklist that we produce, and we will also publish with the scientific paper that shows the processes we went through so that other countries can actually replicate this approach. So from the academia perspective, for us, it's really important, whatever methodology we use is actually replicable by other countries, especially if you're conducting policy-oriented research like our institution that I work. So that's why it's really important we publish everything along with the limitations and problems that we've faced throughout the process. And like openly, we report on all the details, how we went through, what challenges we faced, and what we did to overcome or mitigate these challenges. So this will be part of the scientific paper that is hopefully coming up soon. This is from the Smart Nature for Youth Volunteers Foundation. Another interesting thing for us is academia that is working in the field of sustainability science, because when you're talking about sustainability science, you have to talk about transdisciplinarity, you have to talk about engaging people in scientific processes. But this particular project also has helped us to bridge very local level data collection efforts with the global monitoring processes. So this has been particularly important for us to bridge this very local level with the national global level monitoring processes, and by leveraging the SDG framework. This was an important outcome of the process. In terms of our experience, like our colleague from Norway has rightly highlighted, I think it's also a very important point for Ghana. Ghana has a statistical act that they updated their statistical act in 2019 to be able to work with the new data sources and to integrate them or to use them as official statistics. This was extremely helpful for us to be able to use these data as official statistics in the country. So it's really important to have the legislative base that helps the national statistical offices to really use this potential of such data sources. Another important lesson from the project was really to take time, to create the time and the space for the government, for international organizations, for civil society organizations, which are these networks that are actually working on the ground, in order to build trust, common goals, and ownership over the results. So I naively started, when we started this project, I thought that this would be about a 6-month project, but it ended up being a 2-year project. But this time was really necessary to take. Because everybody has, when they come around the table, especially on these topics related to data, and you have to involve all key stakeholders, they come around the table with different interests, with different motivations, and especially with different concerns. So one organization or stakeholder may be more interested in data, while the other may be more interested in action in their own communities. So we really need to make sure that everybody is speaking the same language during the process. So now, with this work that I'm working with Mariana and a couple of other colleagues at the UNDP OGC, on a new indicator that is 16.6.2, proportion of population satisfied with their last experience of public services. This is a very interesting piece of work because in the previous project that I highlighted, we actually reused already existing data and we made it policy relevant, right, by involving all the key stakeholders. But in this particular piece of work, we will not be able to work with already existing data because there's no existing citizen science data for this. We will be producing the data, but the way we will do this is basically not top-down, more bottom-up. So we will work with the communities we will understand their concerns. And when we are building the technologies to collect data on this particular indicator, we want to make sure that whether the technologies that we're producing or we're using is actually accessible to everyone, even to the most hard to reach populations within the community, and it can be used by everyone, and is the preferred source of way of collecting data. So it is really important with this particular piece of work to work with these communities, and we will start the piloting of this exercise with the UNDP OGC, with the Ghana Statistical Service and other partners, really from a district level, and then we will be able to then, if the results are successful, and after the learning from the process, we will be hopefully roll out at a national level. And this particular indicator is about measuring people's last experience with public services, and that covers healthcare, education, and government services, and particularly looking into the affordability of these services and all the others. So this is the process that we will be using of designing and implementing citizen science project, which is a process that we published last year. And the reason why we are really interested in using citizen science for the context of this particular indicator, understanding citizen satisfaction, which is a very amenable approach to citizen science, investing in a data ecosystem that supports citizen science data, empower hard-to-reach populations, and this is one of our main goals, and inclusive decision-making is really at the heart of it. And citizen science can really help design effective policies and reveal gaps in the official data and help complement them properly, and especially for those who are usually left behind. So this is all from me. I'm happy to also answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And by the way, 1662 is one of the most beautiful indicators under SDG 16. All our indicators are beautiful, by the way. So thank you so much, Dilek. And it's a really impressive work that Dilek's doing. With UNDP, we're very interested in exploring new ways and investing in new ways, but also continuing to exploring our traditional sources, complementing each other. So before I pass, now I think Susan will not be able to join us. So just as Canada. But I'm sure that we'll have a lot of more opportunities, maybe in the next World Data Forum. I wanted to ask, did we have any questions for our presenters today? Any pressing questions? No?
Afternoon, everybody. I have a question for you. Our participant from Norway. I can't pronounce.
Vedjern?
Yeah, I think it's just a clarity seeking question. I heard from Norway they have really different experience. Where I come from South Africa. My name is Hautan. Maybe to you are saying your statistical office has a direct mandate to access data from administrative systems from other government departments. If that is the case, how do you manage conflicts if you publish or release the data? Because I know government departments will also want to release information from their systems. Is there ever a conflicting results that may affect your office? I understood that you said you are trusted, but I know there may be some clashes. And over and above that, if we have a direct access to their systems, why do you need to get a unique number? Because each and every citizen, I will assume that has an ID number. So why don't you use just an ID number, unless you intend to release that information at the unit level? I heard you talked about the unique ID number. No, not ID number, unique identity. Yeah, why do you need that, unless you need to release it at that level?
Thank you so much. Before I pass to Vebjørn, do we have any more questions? And we don't. So Vebjørn, please.
Yeah, thank you. Those are both very good questions. First of all, when it comes to timing and of the production of the statistics, we normally have a little bit of a lag where the directorate who kind of owns the data, they produce, for instance, their education statistics first. And then we receive the data, but we add some additional information on that. For instance, how migrants do when it comes to education status and so on. And then we produce the statistics. So normally it's the owner who produces their statistics first, but that's also very normally it's statistics on cases, not on persons. And then we produce the statistics on persons. So there is kind of a system to that. When it comes to the second questions about the ID number, we use the ID number to link the data. That's the main purpose. It is possible to link data using other variables like name and date of birth and so on, but it makes it much more complicated and more time consuming. So that's, I think that the ID number makes it easier than to link the data within the system. And I just wanted to add a little bit about the last presentation we heard from Dilek, because I think the example she used on this 16.6.2 about the proportion satisfied with the last experience when they met with government, that's a perfect example of an indicator that you really need a survey. You need to ask the population. You can't get that from a register. So here we would also use the survey instrument. But our worry is that if we use the survey instrument for all those other areas where the administrative registers could be used, then we tire the population and they get fed up with answering the questions. So you should really reserve surveys to questions like this on perceptions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Vebjørn. So we have reached time, really in time. I want to thank everyone on behalf of the co-organizers of the session. I want to thank our presenters and the rest of the representatives for the time and for staying. And she was looking very engaged in the presentations. So thank you. And if there's any question that arise during these days, we have a very big UNDP delegation this time, so just come to us. Thank you so much.